Hi, Marty with Pacific Transformer. Welcome to the Pacific Transformer podcast. I am here with Justin Richardson, one of the owners of Pacific Transformers. And today we've got a really fun episode about the work that Pacific Transformer has done in guitar amplifiers. And there's a rich history there, isn't there, Justin?
Yeah, it's we're really lucky. I mean, transformers are used ubiquitously across everything that's electronic. So it's a lot of fun when we get to really work with people who are as passionate about electronics that we are, and those guys who are making those guitar amps are certainly passionate about their craft.
Oh, that is an understatement. I think it bears having a discussion that we're just on the heels of NAMM. And for those of you who do not know what NAMM is, it's we're not referring to the Vietnam War, although sometimes it can feel like war. We are referring to the North America Music Merchants show here in Anaheim, California. And it is a massive trade show for music. And I promise you, it's the loudest trade show you've ever been to. You've got piano, you've got drums, you've got guitar, you've got trumpets. It is massive, it's eclectic, and it is loud. Your ears ring after that show for days. I only attended for the first day, and I'm still trying to get over that. Not to mention, with all the wild people there, you're almost inevitably going to catch the flu or some sort of thing, which is the running joke between everybody that actually goes to NAMM.
Oh yeah, you go to NAMM and come back with NAMM thrax, right?
Yeah, NAMM thrax. It's that's exactly what it's called. So we're just on the heels of NAMM, and Pacific Transformer exhibited at NAMM, and it was a really fun show. So Pacific Transformer, again, has been in the world of guitar transformers for a lot of years, and is really well known for being kind of the secret sauce to a lot of amp manufacturers that may not have used something else over the course of some time. But what's really interesting is that the show this year was really cool because one of the most iconic amplifiers is what they call a 65 Deluxe Reverb by Fender. It's just known as like the workhorse. If you go to a studio, if you go to a live show, the house stuff, I promise you, it's going to be a 65 Deluxe reissue. That's what they're going to have there. It is a workhorse. It is the pickup truck of guitar amplifiers. Everyone has them. Everyone knows what they are. And they make a reissue of it. A lot of it's PCB board. They're built overseas. They're meant to hit a certain price point. And so we brought two of them. One in its all original state, as is, and the second one was with all Pacific Transformer iron. And I had not heard it until we actually went to NAMM. And I have to say, I knew it was going to be a pretty decent difference, but I was actually quite surprised, genuinely surprised of how big of a difference it was between both amps. I mean, volume, body, crunch, it enhanced everything across the board. But what was really cool is that we had a little A/B switch there too. So with the guitar, you can just play and you can go back and forth between each amplifier. And that seemed to grab quite a bit of attention, which was awesome.
No, it was a lot of fun. I mean, just seeing the people, because everybody there is, even if they aren't a manufacturer, even if they aren't in the business, in the industry, everybody goes there and is a huge music fanatic. And so a lot of them are artists themselves, right? A lot of them are guitar players. So having them go, stop by the booth, we had a couple of demo guitars there as well. They picked it up and they started to play around, and then they switched from one to another. Just watching their faces, their jaws drop, basically. Like, what did you do over here? Why does this sound so much better? It was a lot of fun.
I've been playing guitar since I was about 11, 12 years old. And nothing makes you feel more humiliated than when someone walks over that doesn't look like they ever played in their life, and they just wail on the thing. You're like, wow, I am nothing. I'm insignificant. And now I'm embarrassed.
It's true.
But what's funny is that you will see the most eclectic people you've ever seen. You will also see some of the most talented humans you've ever seen. And then you just randomly, it'll be like, oh, there goes John Mayer. Oh, there goes the guys from Toto. Oh, it is just Jack White was a speaker at one of the things. It's you see these guys and you're like, oh my gosh, these are like heroes of the industry, and they're just walking around, no big deal. But the show is mainly where a lot. I mean, the first day is usually music stores that are buying for their stores. They're getting their buys ready for the next, and every manufacturer's there showing the new gear. So. Which was fun. It was fun to be a part of, and Pacific Transformer has been there for a long time, and like I said, has been in the industry for nearly since the beginning. Just for people that actually know about guitar amplifiers and culture, some of the most iconic amps, like literally ever made, have Pacific Transformer iron in them. We've talked about it a million times, and it's on the website and all those things. But there's a couple amplifiers in the world that have been built, and they've done it at very small scale, and they've created this aura of the best amps ever made. And some of them literally go for six figures now, the originals. Dumble's one of them, but another one would be Trainwreck. And Trainwreck, actually, one of the early partners at Pacific Transformer, worked with Ken Fisher, the owner and designer of Trainwreck amplifiers. That was known as a really special amplifier. And all the country western guys, that was like a Nashville super hero. And Brad Paisley plays one still to this day. It's known as the amplifier. They're very touch sensitive. You have to be a good player to play them too, because it accentuates everything, including your mistakes. So it definitely doesn't meet my criteria for an amplifier. I try to go the other way, where whatever amp can hide my mistakes is the amps that I naturally gravitate towards. But Trainwreck's right now, if you look them up and you try to get a Rocket or Liverpool or any of the amps, number one, it'll be in nearly six figures. Second of all, when you open it up, it'll have a Pacific Transformer part number on it, because you guys were the OEM guys, which is really cool. And again, for those who don't know, the working with sound is such a visceral but very hard to describe thing. Yeah. And I think where Pacific does a decent job is being able to interpret these somewhat ambiguous adjectives to describe sound, like attack and body and fitness and all this stuff that these guitar players use, and translate that into actual engineering. Because at the end of the day, you got to build the darn thing. And I think that was kind of the superpower of Pacific Transformer back in the day, and why so many people kind of gravitated towards them in the early days. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and that a lot of that goes back to our background in being a custom manufacturer, right? We aren't making a catalog of transformers for commerce and commercial applications. We really, our whole reason for being in existence is to cater to our customers, specifically to engineers. And so that's in our DNA, is when we have an engineer come to us with a problem, and they say, hey, I need this input voltage, this output voltage, but it can't be more than 2 inches high, or whatever it might be. And then we come up with that solution. So it was actually a natural fit when we had somebody come in who was talking about, hey, I need, this kind of output, about 4, 6, 8 ohms, whatever it is. But at the same time, maybe they're using different vernacular in order to get that across, as far as hey, I want it a little softer and this and that. But really just the ability for our engineers in order to turn on that listening device, and say I get what you mean. I get what you're talking about. And then be able to like you mentioned, throw that into the black box and be able to create that prototype that comes back out exactly how they wanted it to sound. That it was a very natural fit from who we were to begin with as a company.
Yeah, because transformers can almost be commoditized. You can go online and search anywhere and on Amazon, and they'd be delivered to your door. But it's it doesn't have the same, with audio, it's so specific. You're looking for a particular sound. And I know it has such an implication on the sound. I know that's where a lot of guys, even to this day, some of the biggest names, we met, we have a video coming out and actually has the guys from Matchless and 2Rock and Divided by 13. We're talking some of the biggest, well-regarded names in the business that choose Pacific. And let's call it as it is. It's because of the sound. These guys they have a high-end amplifier. Everyone knows what they are. They're not cheap. They're not cheap amplifiers, but this is no stone left unturned type of amplifiers that the best musicians in the world that want to use these amplifiers. And what's cool about that is that a lot of these guys, they choose Pacific Transformer because it's the sound. And we'll put a link to the video that's we have the first version of it, but we also have an extended cut that's coming out that has the guys from 2Rock discussing why they chose Pacific. And it's really fascinating to hear like their take on it, because you kind of see it from the engineering side, the business side, but have these artists really like describe it back is really actually quite interesting. But I think that's a good transition though, to just winding back the clock a little bit. And I know I'm going to jump all over the place, but I think it's important to give some context back to this, because Pacific Transformer's been in the business since I think it was 1981. So we're talking 40 plus years of this.
Almost 45 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just, as much as we talk, guitar amplifiers and things, that is not the spectrum of that is quite small in guitar amplifiers. There's medical, there's aerospace, there's your transformers are literally roaming on Mars as we speak, which is another really fun, interesting fact. Yeah. And we'll do a whole podcast just on that, I'm sure. But I mean, winding back the clock, and just a little bit about the history of Pacific Transformer and how they got into, I guess, guitar amplifiers. I mean, I would love for you to take us back kind of to the beginning and how this all transpired.
Yeah, and just the quick genesis of Pacific Transformer started like a lot of other companies, 3 guys drinking beer after a softball game, and just one guy complaining about work, and it was Randy Naverka, one of the founders. He was an electrical engineer by trade, and he was talking about how his company that he was working at, they had been bought by a larger company. And when they got bought, they actually just shuttered his division and said, okay, you aren't selling transformers to the public anymore. And so Randy was sitting there in between drinks, and he says, and I got all these customers who keep calling me and asking to buy transformers from me, but I have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't build anything for you. And so lo and behold, his 2 best friends sitting across the table, almost spit out their beer, saying so hold on, wait a minute. You got customers who are calling you for a product that you already know how to design. They're begging to hand over money, and you have to say, no, sorry, I can't do that. And so it didn't take long before those 3, which is, yeah.
How old were they when this happened?
Yeah,
approximately
20s. Yeah, 23, 22, 23, 24 years old.
Don't you just love that though? It's 23 drinking beer, not liking their job, and it's wait, you have customers and they want to buy things from you? Well, how hard can this be? The naivete / industriousness of an early 20-year-old. It's so great.
Why not? Let's everything. Just boil it down. Keep it simple, right? Somebody wants to give me money, I'm going to do whatever it takes in order for that to happen. So yeah, it was Randy Naverka, Jim Richardson, and Pat Thomas, and the 3 of them rounded up, I think it was $3,000 each, just to kind of make sure that they had they could put in and buy a winding machine, and the first customer, the next time Randy got a call, he took it and said, hey, I can make that for you, right? But I have to collect half of the cost up front. Just I need to buy raw material, right?
Another 20 something naivete move. where you're like, hey, they don't know. They're just going to throw it out there. Like, hey, just so you know,
buy the material.
Yeah, you're going to bankrupt us by your order unless you pay.
Unless you pay
for the
upfront.
materials.
Yeah. So they collected the money, bought the material. They literally had 2 weeks to deliver the parts. They promised him they would have, the 400 parts done in 2 weeks. Within 4 days, they had all the parts ready and ready to be delivered back to the customer. They actually had to borrow my grandma's station wagon to deliver the parts. They put them all in the back of the station wagon. This thing's like dragging across the asphalt, sparks flying left and right. And lo and behold, they pull up to the customer and empty it out. And the guy is just flabbergasted. Like, how did you do this in 4 days? Like, what's going on? And so he paid the 3 guys right there on the spot. And lo and behold, we still actually have that same customer to this day.
Really?
So the first customer 44 years ago, still have that same customer. Yeah.
That's rare and incredibly wild that you guys, everyone still exists, even nearly, half of a century later. That's wild. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't happen. So that was in the early, that was 1981. Yeah.
That's wild. I know Pac-Man tournaments and all sorts of, like, all the stories that you would, like, if you were to write a script about a Silicon Valley startup, it would probably be, this is the prototypical story of how it goes.
Oh, when it was just those 3, they basically got very good at, that game on Atari Pong, right? So it was the 2 little beep, boop, boop,
Yeah.
So they got very good at that because the 2 of them would just sit there in the office and play against one another. And the 3rd person had to be outside winding transformers. And whoever lost had to go and wind transformers. And then they got to play the winner, right? You know what I mean? So you had to work really hard in order to not wind transformers. Otherwise, you'd be doing that all night long. So, that's how they got really, really good at Pong.
That's really funny. That they were incentivized, like, to do Pong better, so they wouldn't have to work. It's beer, borrowing mom and dad's car, borrowing money from the parents. It's all working out of the garage, Pong. It's all, again, it's right. It's almost unbelievable because it's so, like, stereotypical. Like, you could literally pull that into a script for a Silicon 100%. Valley startup. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. That's why, that's why customers, I think, also, because that's within our DNA, like that's just kind of still who we are to this day. We're much, much larger company. We deal with Fortune 500 companies, the military, NASA, obviously some of the largest companies in the world, but we still try and maintain that quick, flexible, high touch approach to all of our customers, to where it feels like they're working with that small family owned private company, because that allows them to make sure they get their product quick. It makes them feel like we care, because we do. We're authentic about it. We're transparent. We're honest. And all these things, it comes across quickly and easily because it's who we are. We aren't necessarily faking it. So that I think has been some of our secret sauce over the years.
Yeah, I can attest, just having interactions over the years with both you and Pat and other people there. You have the attitude of, like, still a scrappy startup, like, hey, just knock on their door and tell them, just try us. No harm, no foul. And you've got a problem that's outside of your wheelhouse. We'll figure it out. We will come up with solutions. And I think that's the testament, is the creating those solutions that most people say no to. I remember Pat telling me that the famous line was, it's not impossible until we say it is, because many other, he says, the amount of business I've gotten from people that says it can't be done, I said, well, let us give it a shot. and that we've been able to pull the rabbit out of the hat are more times than not, which is, again, a testament to, I think, to the scrappy nature of saying, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll do it. Now you guys have probably the experience of just about everything. Do you remember, so why, like pulling it back to guitar stuff, do you know the first Transformers and how that kind of came about in the guitar amp world?
Yeah, so definitely, it became something that was a skill. We would have these inquiries, and they started just by one-offs of people, requesting power transformers, outputs, and stuff like that. And a lot of it was just based on like, hey, I got this old amp, and I'm wondering if you guys could do a replacement for me, and stuff like that, right? Now, being the having the engineering mindset and the inquisitive nature, when we got that request, we didn't just haphazardly throw together some sort of like makeshift replacement for the customer. We took an old burnt up Marshall or whatever it might have been, unwound it, turn by turn, counted it, documented it, cataloged the material. I mean, everything down to the lamination, the wire, the Teflon, everything involved in it. And started to do that in maybe the mid 80s, late 80s. And without thinking much of it, because there was not any big OEM. We weren't doing a lot, high production runs, nothing like that. But what we were doing over time is that we were cultivating that experience, building that human capital, that tribal knowledge of what it takes to actually make a good amp part.
Yeah.
So we get a random call from some guy in New Jersey living in his mother's basement. True story. And he reaches out to Randy, our head of design at the time, and he's asking for us to create a new transformer, a new output power transformer. And so him and Randy, they go back and forth, and they have a bunch of prototypes and iterations of these transformers. And finally we send them, a batch, and it wasn't more than 5 units, maybe 10. And that was it. We didn't hear from them for another like 9-12 months at least.
Jeez.
And then we got something in the mail, and it was like a package. And within the package, it didn't have anything else in it except a magazine. And it was this, forget Guitar World or Guitar magazine. And on the very cover, it said the best amp in the world. And there was a picture of a Trainwreck amp by Ken Fisher. And lo and behold, we get this, and sure enough, it was Ken Fisher who was working with Randy this whole time.
Yeah.
And provided him the iron that went into it. And his amp got nominated that year and was declared the best amp in the world. And so only after that now all of a sudden the word was out. We started getting people hitting us up from all over the United States saying, hey, did you do the Trainwreck, transformers? And then they would ask us for some other customized thing, something a little bit different here, a little bit different there. And over the next few decades, that's really kind of where we became a mainstay with a lot of the OEMs and boutique amp builders.
It's, again, so my favorite books in the world are biographies, and like the podcast, How I Built This is so much fun. Shameless plug for them, but like, I love the story. I love the arc. Again, it's like this came right out of a story. You know what I mean? Like just one of the typical story where the guy calls up the eccentric type. You don't hear from him, and then it shows up that this is the thing, and it just, again, more fuel on the fire.
Absolutely. No, it's crazy. Again, those are the ones that, because so many times if you think about it, we're working with these Fortune 500 companies, and you get these specs in, and you do a design, put your heart into it. You blood, sweat, tears on the prototype, and you finally get it going, and now it's production, and you aren't even working with the same buyer the next month, who places the PO, or you never hear from the engineer ever again, right? And this is the exact opposite of that. These guys are fully vested. These owners of these amp companies oftentimes are the ones who are literally soldering the chassis, the units to the chassis, everything together. They're putting all the cabinets on, and so these guys really, really care, and so they really resonate with our team.
And a lot of phone calls going back and
forth. A lot of phone calls.
And a lot
of airtime. Yeah, a lot of airtime.
And a lot of ambiguous words to describe what their sound is. But hey, I mean, again, someone's got to interpret it. And I mean, I think that's the benefit of being scrappy and working through those things. You became the go-to. A perfect transition, though, to this is, I think a lot of people, you hear, okay, so even Eli from Two Rock, he said in the video that the transformers are the heart. It's the heartbeat of the transformer, or the transformer of the amplifier, which is really interesting. But from like a more of a technical standpoint, what do I know? I have I've got an amp. I've got actually had a matchless Lightning, and to me, it's just like, this sounds good. This is great. And they say we use the best components and all that fun stuff. Yeah, that's great. But like, why? I don't understand. You don't understand like the technical. I mean, I know in an amplifier, you've got power transformers, you've got output transformers. What distinguishes a cheap one, just kind of like off from China, versus one that like clearly, I heard it for myself, the A/B tested at NAMM. There's a huge difference. The question is why? What makes the difference between a really good one that's handmade versus something that's just right off of the DigiKey website by spec?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and if I told you, I'd have to kill you. So we'll just start there. Yeah, so
I figured as much. I'll start. I get the shovel and then start digging right now.
No, that's it's the access that our listeners will get is figuring out some of the secret sauce. So it is really, a lot of it boils down to two things. One of it is the ingredients used, right? The raw material, the quality of the raw material. And then second is the manufacturing technique, or how that material is put together, right? So when it comes to the raw material, it's not cutting any corners. So we use more expensive lamination, more expensive steel. We use core tubes as opposed to bobbins. We do layer insulation, which takes up a lot of extra costs, because every single time that you wind a transformer, we put another layer of insulation down in between the windings, right? So it's these little tiny things that at the end of the day, the unit itself has much more material cost because of the extra components that we put into it, as well as the extra labor that goes into winding it, and the time that we take to fully pre-bake, varnish, cure, all these types of things. It takes hours, if not days, just for that last process to happen correctly.
Will you give the listeners and hint myself just a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, like what makes a transformer, like what the process and the materials, like just and quick. It could be like 30 seconds to a minute. Just this is kind of how it's made, and just kind of like start to finish and what it's made from. I just I think a lot of people have no idea what goes into it. They just know every day when they start their car, the car starts. If you get my drift.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it boils down to basically two main components, and that's the coil and the core. You start with the coil, and the coil imagine something that looks like I don't know, kind of like an old sewing machine, right? It's just a spindle going across right in front of you. And you have this mandrel, which is just a big block of steel. And around that, you put a core tube, which is just a big old thick piece it's called Nomex, which is a really well insulated piece of paper, and a really thick one. And then you just start and tape and layer down some copper wire, some magnet wire specifically. Yeah. And now this thing starts spinning, and you're by hand. We have people that have been doing it for 30, 35, almost 40 years. By hand, they wind every single coil right there. And they have a little counter off to their left, and there's hundreds and hundreds of turns on this coil, right? And it's multiple layers, multiple different wire gauges. And so you're cutting, taping, more insulation, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, you slide that off and you have this coil. Think of it like a hollow burrito. You know what I mean? Like it's just a coil. Now, with that coil, you now have the core, and that's basically steel. So the coil is all copper with that insulation. And then the core is nothing but electrical steel, high-grade electrical steel. And so usually it comes in the forms of E's and I's, and you slide those pieces of electrical steel into that coil and stack it up until it's, 2, 3, 4 inches thick. And then you put some hardware to hold it all together. That's at the root of it. That's basically all it is, a coil and a core. At the very end, after you obviously varnish it, do the finishing, then you put end bells on in order to jazz it up and protect it and get it to the customer specs. But at the root, it's a coil made of copper and a core made of electrical steel.
Now, in a guitar amplifier, what do those components do? Obviously, the guitar amplifier needs power. I mean, so I know there's two main components in an amplifier, that two main ones. And then you have like the other ones depending on it, like there's reverb drivers and chokes and things. But like the big boy ingredients are the power transformer itself and then the output transformer. What are the roles of both of those two main ingredients in a guitar amplifier?
Got it. Yeah. So the power transformer basically distributes the power from the power source, from the power supply, whether it be off stage somewhere. It comes into the amp, and it distributes power to whether it be the output transformer, the board, all the different components on the board. Basically, it powers everything up and makes sure that the proper voltage goes to each individual area.
So in other words, the power takes the mains, the 110, 120, or 240, depending on where you're at in the world, or sometimes it can take any of those, depending on the transformer, and then it converts it to a different voltage that the board or the rest of the amplifier needs to do its amplification.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
And I assume if you do like an international one, like I was just talking about, you can plug in 240, and that it has different taps on it where you can plug in you can have one transformer that can do both types, like the ones from like Europe and the ones also here. So you can have almost like a universal power transformer.
Absolutely. That, and then they're operating in 50 hertz as opposed to 60 hertz, which is, obviously more common overseas as well too, right? So there's all sorts of little changes that need to happen from the, making sure that the power transformer is dialed into exactly what is needed for not only internally, all the different components that need to be powered up, but externally, what kind of power is coming into the amp.
Sure. And then let's move down the chain a little bit to the output transformer. I assume, from what I know about the output transformer, it literally feeds the speaker, and that comes by way of impedance. And there's usually taps, from what I understand, whether it's 2, 4, 2, 4, 8, but usually 4, 8, and 16 ohms are the most typical that I've seen on a guitar amplifier. And sometimes there's just one tap, and I assume that has to do with the construction of the output transformer. But what is, I guess, again, going back to it, what does the output transformer actually do? I know it feeds the speaker, but what is it actually doing?
Yeah, no, you hit it on its head. So basically, it's powering up the speaker through the tubes, right? And so through those vacuum tubes. And so that is really where the secret sauce comes into play, is through the output transformers, because that's where you hear the difference, is how those are powered up, and the real impact or clarity or lack of clarity or sterileness, smooth sound, crunch, all these adjectives that the amp guys use. That's where it's coming from, is by way of the speaker. And so it all starts with those output transformers as they're kind of pushing through the speakers. That's where you're going to get that sort of filter of the type of sound and tone that's coming from the output transformers.
Got it. Wow. I mean, there's a lot. It's pretty wild what goes into, if you just think about just a product in and of itself, all the little ingredients that make up the soup. I mean, this is just one element of that. And it's pretty wild. Just the amount of hands that touch it is just unbelievable. If you think about the supply chain all the way through, it's to getting an end product, especially something that's artistic and really crafts like a sound is pretty wild. I think that's also a good transition for what are some of this world is filled with marketing nonsense. I'll say it, marketing nonsense. As someone that's been doing marketing since 15 plus years or whatnot, I actually think it's longer than that. So, there are a lot of people in the guitar world. There's a lot of, again, it's artistic. These guys these people are brilliant artists. They hear it, they can put it into their words, but a lot of times they do it from an artistic side, not necessarily a technical side. And so with something as that a lot of artists use, you also have a lot of misunderstandings or myths when it comes to, I guess, mythology when it comes to some of this stuff. What are some? Do you have any sort of what ones do you hear kind of often, that like the myths of, oh, it has to be this or it has to be that? That is just, listen, that's nice, but realistically, it's comes down to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. And to be honest, for us, it's kind of cutting through a lot of the noise as well, because the hard part for us is going back to our DNA as a company has always been to cater to the customer. Okay. Yeah. So again, put yourself in the shoes of one of our design engineers who's used to working with the Department of Defense or some other contractors, the Teslas of the world, or Schneiders, the AB&Bs, whoever it is, right? Yep. We want to make sure that we're always catering exactly to them. Then we have a gentleman who's maybe just rebuilding an amp in his garage, but gets, that same sort of attention or same hotline to our design engineers. And so now they're listening, and they're trying to make sure that they're able to do exactly the same thing for this gentleman over here that they may be doing for some, defense contract engineer designing the next Patriot missile, whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so they're listening, and a lot of it is the people who are going down the rabbit holes and really studying and learning about amps and trying to figure stuff out. There's a lot of misinformation on these gear pages and these other kind of websites, and so they oftentimes don't know what's right and what's wrong. And so they're trying to feed back potentially what are the correct specs for a given transformer. Hey, or, for the output transformer for a 65 deluxe reverb has this, and this. And we have to be able to politely say, hey, that's interesting. I understand where you're coming from on that. I see where you got those specs, but we've gone through and actually have verified and replicated the exact 65 deluxe reverb, and we stand behind what we know to be true, right?
Right.
And so it's being able to do that politely and not say, no, you're wrong. Yeah. It's just being able to be able to say with confidence of, hey, we know what we did. We spent a lot of time poring over this stuff. We have like outside consultants, guys like George Alessandro, as well as tapping into a lot of our friends in the industry that we've been able to go across and have that seal of approval. So I think that's really what it boils down to. It's not necessarily the more along the lines of, hey, if you don't sprinkle this magic fairy dust on the output transformer, that's why Pacific Transformer sounds so good. It's not. That's not.
Yeah.
What it boils down to. There's absolutely companies who may go on the other end of the spectrum and say they're doing X, Y, and Z, but maybe using plastic bobbins or cheaper material, or just doing some automatic winding to where it's less rich of a tone. It's more of a sterile kind of one-dimensional sound that comes because of that. But it's not anything more than you get what you pay for. And once you put the time, the effort, and don't skip on the materials, there's no secrets behind it.
That's interesting. I could see other companies that you go on the gear page and someone says, oh, these guys use their transformers are the best, blah, 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 blah. And then the company saying, yeah, we have a proprietary blah, 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 blah. And they kind of leaning into the fact that there's nothing behind the curtain, that it's materials, it's time, it's specs, boom, there you go. That's the real secret. I
will say that, so that's when it comes to like replicating the old vintage guitar amp transformers, that's kind of the tone that we will take. Now, when we are going hand in hand with some of our OEM partners and developing custom products just for them, then they have like, we're working together as a team in order to make specific designs just for them. And so, that's not something that we will openly, say, hey, here's exactly what this company does for their output transformer. That's something that we make sure that we protect as a partner with our OEMs and manufacturers. That's their information and their right to make sure to keep that as proprietary as they so choose.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's a good transition, actually, that, Pacific Transformer, I think that it's kind of been under the radar to some extent, where all the OEMs, for the most part, know you guys, and a lot of them use you guys, but the DIYers of the world and the guys that try to build things, you guys have always dealt with businesses. That was the DNA, B2B. It was call us up, we'll send you 10, and you work that way, which is great. But I think it's worth noting that a couple years ago, just in that COVID, haze where some of the transformer companies went out of business and whatnot, that you actually did your first direct-to-consumer line branded under Pacific Transformer called Pacific Audio Magnetics, where you guys set up a website and actually sell them directly to the DIYers or even the small amp builders that want to buy 10 of them or whatever and want to do replicas of of a Princeton reverb or, a Harvard or whatever the case. But you guys have a catalog of a decent amount of transformers all the way, most of the vintage Fender line, a lot of the Marshall, the vintage line, some of the Voxes, even the Trainwreck stuff. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff on there that anyone can go buy from, and that was just set up a couple of years ago. And you did a collaboration, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where we saw a real void in the marketplace. We wanted to really, put something out there that people could easily buy at a reasonable price with superlative quality, with something where they would be able to put it in. Just going back to like the NAMM trade show where we did we refit the Twin Deluxe Reverb, the 6.5 Twin Deluxe Reverb with the Pacific Audio Magnetics iron. And that's the only change we made. And the difference is mind boggling. And so being able to offer that to the general public, again, at a reasonable price where it's go on the website as easy as Amazon, search whichever amp you want, power output, choke driver, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And just click buy, and it's out the door within the next couple of days. So that's something that we saw a big vacuum in the market for. And so it took a couple of years for us to go through and meticulously spend all the time and effort in order to really dial in every single replica transformer that we wanted to put on that line, because we weren't going to move forward unless we felt that the quality, more than anything else, was really up to par. And so being able to do that took time. It took 12, 18 months in order to finish that. But now it's been going for the last few years, and it's gotten a really good reception from the public.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest. Just those are the exact transformers that you can buy. The ones that I was referring to earlier on in the podcast were for that 65 Deluxe Reverb. There was not tooting the horn, but there's a significant difference between the two. And I guess, being educated on this stuff and just in this very podcast, I guess it really comes down to the materials and the design of and they really do sound superb. And a lot of people that came to that booth, myself included, was really impressed by just being the fully stock one versus a really inexpensive upgrade to one of the most workhorse amplifiers out there. The speakers were the same. I mean, that's one thing that they go to, the speakers, the tubes, but it was shocking that all else being the same, the Transformers really made a significant difference in the sound.
What's funny about that?
Yeah,
sorry, the best part about that, I think, is we had the two Fender amps at our booth, retrofitted with our iron. And we see the guy, walking along, and he stops and he listens. He starts asking some questions. Lo and behold, it ends up being one of the head buyers at Fender who's stopping by and just like, that sounds amazing, and I'm like, we're looking over our shoulders, like, this is kind of interesting having the guy from Fender himself go in and say, this is all you guys did was just put your iron in here. That's a huge difference, and so it made for a pretty interesting conversation with the gentleman from Fender.
Oh, that's always. It's always fun to see people's reaction too, just kind of walking through, and you caught the people's attention that actually build the darn the amplifier in the first place. I guess one other thing with the Pacific Audio is that you guys did a little bit after you guys kind of got established. You did another line, the Red Series stuff as well.
Yeah.
To try to further bring down that price point a bit more. You want to talk a little bit about the differences in the difference between your vintage series and your Red Series, and kind of go through that a little bit?
Yeah. The Red Series is awesome. It's great for people who are just getting into building their own amps, and just beginners who just want to tinker around, have some fun, right?
Yeah.
We have our international facility in Thailand. And so we take all the knowledge, everything that we cultivated over the last 4 decades plus when it comes to amps, and dictating the exact same type of materials that we need to make sure to purchase and procure in order to make that replica version. And we say, okay, here's all the materials, here's the exact design. And now all we're doing is saying like, hey, facility, Thailand, manufactured over there, ship it over in containers. And then we're able to get that at a lower price point and pass those savings on to our customers who say, hey, this is great. I want to just make a 30 watt output, amp, something like this. It's my first time doing it. And that reception has been absolutely fantastic because they're able to get something at, half the price, and it sounds 80% as good as the other stuff. Yeah. The stuff that's wound in Anaheim, California, in our same factory that we wound the original Trainwrecks in.
Yeah.
Right. So the difference there, obviously, if you're a purist and you want the absolute best that the industry has to offer, then our replica versions, it doesn't get better, right? It's literally made on the same machines as the Trainwrecks, the Two Rocks Divided, Matchless, all of the heavy hitters out there. That's the replica series, but the red series are going to be available 80% of the goodness at 50% of the cost.
The red series are awesome, and the fact is again, going back to the guitar culture, people get hung up on, look at the difference between, the Martins or the Fenders that were built in America. There's just this psychological barrier more than it is, because you could get some amazing guitars that were built in Japan or China or Mexico. If they weren't labeled that, you would never know, and you blind test them. And there's so many guys on YouTube that do it, that blind test them and can't figure out what's what. But it's that psychological change that this was made in America on these, and people like the story. Let's just call it as it is. They like the story behind, this one has this pickups in it, and this one I made it my own. People like making things their own. And what's cool is that you could still get the great sounding iron. And if you have no such, if you've got no such predisposition for it has to be American made, it's a heck of a bargain, and it's literally the same stuff, just at a different price point, but you can kind of cater to both.
That's it. If again, like we literally, like, if you want an output transformer that was wound by the same lady who wound Ken Fisher's Trainwreck output transformers, Rebecca is still sitting back there. Rebecca is doing it. She's counting, she's got the little counter. She's doing it. She's been doing it for 37 years, right? So, that's absolutely, that's something that we're very proud of. And to be able to have that continuity, that travel knowledge, in order to be able to still be doing what we do today that we were 3-4 decades ago.
Yeah, I forgot what the woman's name. There's a woman at Seymour Duncan, the pickup company, and so there's two people that have this the aura. It's Seymour himself, and I forgot the lady's name. That if one of those two, I think it's like Abigail or something, and if those two, that like, those are the custom shop ones that were wound by, like, okay, the aura, you know what I mean? This is it.
Yep.
I think for the last, I guess the last sales pitch of the episode here, the other thing that Pacific did this year is on the Pacific Audio Magnetics parts, that you guys did a 100% money back guaranteed on all the products built on the site, which is huge, because a lot of guys in the space will say, as soon as you cut those leads, it's a done deal. You're committed at this point. But I mean, it's a really simple, from you guys' perspective, think it's super simple. You're going to put it in, you're going to love it because they sound way better. You know what I mean? It's a no-brainer, but it breaks that psychological barrier of people saying, I've heard you guys are really great, but there's those guys over here that have kind of owned the DIY market that I'm a little bit fearful of. So to have that is a really cool way of lowering the barrier to entry.
Oh yeah, the proof is in the pudding. We have no qualms about that whatsoever, and we know, not just from sitting in our own chairs thinking, we have the best product, but from going to the market and all our OEMs and all of the decades of people who have bought from us in the past. We literally, it's a no-brainer for us. Like we don't hesitate at all. And because we know once it's in the rig, like it's game over, right? There's not going to be much turning back as far as, going back to what was in there before. So for us, it was a no-brainer. We stand behind our product 100%.
Justin, this has been fun. We've been blabbing about this nonsense for an hour.
56 minutes and 7 seconds.
Can you believe that it's just wild that there's a lot of history in there and a lot of cool stuff to talk about, and the world of guitar amps is pretty rich. The fact that we could talk about literally power transformers, I guess, is just a testament to the depth and breadth of the company. But yeah, it's been fun.
Or how big of a nerd we are. That's
I was trying not to go there. I mean, but I guess we can be self-deprecating. But this is
do it all day long. I love it.
Yeah. It's been fun. So guys, subscribe, add comments. I'm really interested to hear the comments. Will you direct them to Justin himself? He'll respond directly to any specific questions that you have about guitar or amplifiers or transformers or whatever things that you want to throw at him, where he got that fancy sweater at. I mean, there's lots. Throw him his way. Doesn't he look sharp? And then we'll respond to all of them. But subscribe. I will leave links to the video. The new video is awesome. It was really awesome for the guys over at True Rock to give an interview, and Phil over at Matchless. What awesome guys. What really cool guys that have just a passion for their stuff. Check out their stuff. It's amazing. It's about as good as it gets. Check out their stuff. Packtran.com. If you need something direct, need it custom, you need it to fly to space, Packtran.com. You want to make your amplifier, you want to outrig your deluxe reverb, your Tweed Deluxe, whatever, PacificAudioMagnetics.com is where to check it out. And then, this is Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, where all the high quality shows such as this are at. But I appreciate, Justin, the time. We appreciate the views. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.